everyone. A big welcome back to the Nick Elston Show, Season 5, Episode 14. Now, I'm taking you way back to Season 1 in very early in 2020. One of my first guests on the show was the wonderful Louise McMilan, aka our Lou, from here on in. That's what I call her. And I've never done this before, but I wanted to bring Lou back because I think she's got such a powerful message, a powerful story. So give it up. Big round of applause for Lou McMilan. Woo!
Thank you, Nick. Thank you for inviting me back. It's such a privilege to be back, to be invited back. So thank you so much.
Yes, I'm not. So we're in new territory here, you see. But do you know what? I think the story that you shared first time round deserved a bigger audience. And at the time, I never had that bigger audience for you. But now I have. I want to bring you to as many people as possible because I think it's really important messages in there, actually, but also the way that you handled that. But this is also going to be a very different experience. Notice I told you this after I clicked record.
Typical. You want to keep me on my toes.
Yeah. Before we go anywhere, tell us who you are and what you do and where you're from. Think like you're on the chase.
Okay. So I'm Louise McMilan. I'm an inspirational speaker. So I talk about my mental health and I talk about my breast cancer because I'm really passionate about getting mental health out in the open, especially for women as well. And obviously you can never be too careful about checking your breasts. And I'm also a personal development coach. So I work with individuals to help them put that life-work balance back together, stop that overthinking, and making sure they've got fun on their agenda. It's all about living life more fully on their terms, not on anybody else's. So that's me. Oh, and I'm based in the sunny seaside town of Weston-super-Mare.
Love Weston-super-Mare. Lovely place.
Yeah.
I recharge by water, and you do too, don't you?
I do. I'm very much in nature. Yeah. So whether it's walking on the seafront, when the tide's in, it's usually quite helpful as well. But if not, gotta get that in, aren't I? Yeah. If not, I just love being out in nature, being out in green space, and I'm very lucky I've got a park and love my walking.
Yeah. It's a big community feel to Western. I know we got down a really weird rabbit hole right from the start, but you know me, it's just a conversation just recorded. Absolutely. That's also. Yeah. It's got a strong sense of community, Western, hasn't it? People that live there love it, absolutely love it. I think so, but I've not really lived anywhere else apart from 9.5 weeks. No, that's a film. 9 weeks. Now, if I got to dust this explicit rating off, I haven't used it in a while, so I got to dust it off for this one.
You know me, I always like to shock you. About 9 weeks in Bristol for a while when I was in between houses in Weston. I went and lived with a friend for a while. But I'm born and bred Weston, and so are my parents. So I know no different. So it's home. But yeah, so there is a bit of more of a community happening. But yeah, to me, it's just home. So.
Yeah, love that. You've got the new the rig. What's it called? It's the sea monster, isn't it?
Sea monster, yes.
So cool. If you've not, I'll pop a link in the bio for those who have not seen it.
But really, have a look. I think now it's got some more of the sort of plants and stuff on it. It's looking a lot better than when it did when I first saw it. But yeah, it's impressive. Let's just say I walked down the road the other day and I was like, whoa.
And for those of you who are like far-flung places like South Africa and all the rest of my audience that makes it up, like if you're thinking, what are these two loons on about? There's a repurposed oil rig that's been placed at the coastal resort of Weston-super-Mare, which has been turned into a multi-story haven of nature. And I love the idea behind that. But again, we're going to move on because I've probably got trapped in the wrong rabbit hole from the start. So take us way back, Lou. Tell us about little Lou. I mean, tell us about kind of growing up and what got you to that kind of point of adversity that you've alluded to already.
Yeah, so I'm middle daughter. So never the first to really do anything. And the age gap being so that nothing really had changed by the time I was going through those different school stages and college stages. And obviously I'm not the younger one that everyone spoiled. And I'll put my hand up that I did spoil my little sister as well. There's quite a bigger age gap between us. But I was very much heavily involved in guides. I was very much heavily involved in music at school. So
guys.
Pardon?
You say guys?
Guides. Girl guides.
Oh, guides.
I was going to say you normally make a comment, but you missed that. You normally make a comment.
I'm trying to be on better behaviour than I was in season one.
But and also music I'm very heavy into music at school. So orchestra, jazz band, woodwind band, choir, lived my life in the music rooms. And growing up, it was kind of, I was always kind of not the sensitive one, but I suppose the one that kind of listened to everybody else. So, when comments are made, and they're made quite often enough by not just your siblings, but your cousins and your school friends, you can't help but kind of believe them, if that makes sense. And I know I've looked back from an early age and spoke to my mum that I suffer from seasonal affective disorder. So come to the winter months, I was always the one that was inside the house reading a book, whereas my sisters and my neighbours, we lived in lovely little cul-de-sac, were out playing. I was the one that goes on, I'm going to stay in and read my book. So seasonal affective disorder did affect me. And I suppose as I got older, into those more formative years and into my early career, very much kind of a bit more cautious about who I was and how I did things, and overthought things and didn't believe in myself. And that exasperated very much into my 20s. I moved into HR as a career. I enjoyed it. I found it not simple, but it kind of met my kind of common sense approach. And yes, it was challenging, but I was waiting for someone to find me out, because I'm like, sometimes I used to think this can't be that simple. And even though I was professionally qualified, I would, just always like waiting for it to be found out. But as I got older, I would become even more, my self-esteem became lower, and my confidence even more, I suppose, ripped apart in some respects. I never thought I was funny enough, pretty enough, interesting enough for even just sometimes going out with my friends, let alone romances. And being in HR, it can be quite challenging about dealing with, the doom and gloom, as I call them. Not disciplinary grievances aren't Dolce & Gabbana, they're doom and gloom, as I used to call them.
Nice.
When you wake up every day going, am I doing a disciplinary? Am I doing a grievance? Am I doing a poor performance? Am I doing a sickness? And is it a long-term sickness as well? That's quite challenging on you. And
actually, that's huge. You mentioned that, and it's a really interesting point that, as we record this in September, I delivered a CIPD webinar earlier on, and this point came up, that people get into the position of leading people, caring for people, supporting people, because they are naturally more inclined to do that. They've either had poor experiences of not being dealt with well before. So like yourself, actually stepping into that role, potentially there is that risk of becoming that kind of wounded healer, isn't it? So
absolutely,
you dealing with all of that stuff, actually by default, for all the wrong reasons, because it's good reasons why you did that role, for all the wrong reasons, you kind of take on the burden a lot heavier than somebody else would. Is that right?
Absolutely, because you're on that middle person between the manager that wants to do something and is frustrated, and the individual that sometimes has just made a genuine mistake. But of course, it's then making sure that the manager's keeping in the law, and you're not making a decision, you're advising. And of course, you've got that battle sometimes when they want to do certain things, and you have to go, you can't, well, you can do that, but here are the implications, of, tribunals, fees, the risks to the company of, those kind of things. And that's quite hard going. And of course, because you're in HR, you can't talk about it. You can't, you can't come home and sort of go blah, 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 to anybody that would hear, because it's confidential.
Yeah. And you've also got that element of, like I said, with that kind of people seeing you or possibly getting aggressive or negative at the very least with you as a human, when actually you are just an implement of the organization, but they see it on a very personal level, don't they?
Absolutely. It is that whole thing. You walk into a room, oh, HR's here again, and it's like, we can have a laugh, and I remember having conversations with people and they're going, you can't say that, you're HR. And I go, well, I can, because you're obviously unhappy. Yeah. So let's just have an honest conversation. Yeah. It's those kind of things. And actually, you do get people, employees and managers that do apologize for the way they spoke to you and come back 2 years later. I remember one incident, I was walking through the middle of Bristol in Broadmead with a friend, and I could see this ex-colleague, and I could see them kind of walking towards me, and I'm thinking, kind of breathe through it. And actually, he stopped me and apologized for how he was, which I thought, all credit to him. Yeah. But he thanked me because his life had changed so much. But the fact that he actually
just before or after you punched him, by the way, is it?
I never find him. I never
had him by the throat. He apologized to me.
There's a saying I have when people say to me, "What are you crying for?" And I'm going, I'm crying because if I don't, I'll punch you. So therefore, my crying is excused.
Disclaimer: we do not endorse violence, but just in case as a disclaimer.
It's only because we know each other very well. We can
exactly, yeah.
But you know what I mean. You know you kind of make a difference, but it's hard going. But the impact that sometimes that had on me and my own, I suppose, demeanor really was that I would spiral in and out of depression. The anxiety would rise. I wouldn't take care of myself. I'd be busy. You know, even I can eat 4 chocolate bars a day without any problem. But you know, I didn't look after
Very
myself.
weird high five.
You know, and I wasn't sleeping. I used to have this thing of having a post-it notes by the side of my bed. And if I'd gone into work and something was written on that post-it note for the third morning in a row, I wasn't leaving work until it was done. Now, it might not have been important or something that was needed to be done straight away, but because it was playing on my mind, because potentially it could have been who it was for, you know, that whole kind of, they were of some position of, or, you know, I kind of looked up to them or something, then I had to get it done because it was eating away at me. And what would happen is I would end up spiraling into depression. I'd come home from work, I'd go straight to bed. I'd get up and I'd go to work, and I come home and I go straight to bed. And in my weekends, I was keeping myself busy. Sometimes I don't know with what, but I keep myself busy, because if I stopped and did nothing, that was failing. You didn't stop and not do anything. You know, you had to keep going, whatever. And so it would take its toll. And then I would get to a stage where I would literally realize I'm sat on the bathroom floor crying when I should be getting ready to go to work.
Where did that driver come from? Where did that driver to keep going? Is it because of a fear of kind of being in your own thoughts, or was it actually more of a superficial kind of formative conditioning element?
I suppose it's two things. One is my parents worked a lot. They were workaholics, you know, and growing up, you didn't have a day off school unless you were dying. You know, if you're really bad, they'll phone us up and they'll send you home. So because that was what it was like back in the 80s at school. And my parents very much, you didn't miss a day of school. I think I missed one day of being on holiday because they changed our days back, that we went back to school. Holidays, that was school holiday time. Do you know what I mean? School was so important. And that was them for their working as well. They did 6 to 6 or 6 to 9. And I mean, 6 in the morning, 6 to 9 at night, you know, working. And so I had that work ethic in me. The other thing is, how do you explain to somebody what's going on in your head when you can't understand it yourself?
Oh, great question. Yeah, absolutely.
That was the pivotal thing. How do you explain to somebody how you're feeling? And when they immediately go to, what do you mean you've got depression? What have you got to be depressed about? I've got it worse. I've got X, Y, and Z. You know, and very much for a couple of organizations I work with in the HR team, if I said anything, well, you obviously can't cope. You're not resilient enough. You need to be a bit more resilient to work in HR. To support anybody else in the business with depression, with stress, with anxiety, this is what we do. In HR, oh no, you can't have depression and work in HR. You can't have anxiety or, you know, your mental health not be well if you work in HR. That's not what happens.
And so, I guess the provisions, let alone the understanding, the awareness, but the provisions that were in place at the time probably weren't in place at the time that they would.
Absolutely. Yeah. And quite often, because I worked in HR, and dealt with occupational health, and I built such a relationship with those in occupational health, whether they were internal or external, I ended up having the conversations with them myself, because we built up such rapport that I would know them and say, oh, how are you doing? How was your holiday? What's going on? So they would share, and then they go, Louise, you don't, you know, look your normal self. And we had a rapport where I would share things with them. And so therefore I would get that support. But of course, it never went back to the workplace because they didn't refer me. I was chatting myself to them.
So your only solution would have been to have a chat to yourself, like literally have a word with yourself.
With occupation, yeah, absolutely.
But then we wonder why people don't engage in workplace initiatives, which, I mean, why is it that we're both in the Southwest? In the Southwest, you've probably got a 4-month wait for a CBT assessment, for example. But through a large organization, you can probably get instant help or instant access straight away. Why don't we do it? Because of what we're talking about here. because we've spent a long time, especially our generation, spent a long time being taught, don't trust work with your personal stuff.
Absolutely. Yeah. And you have to be professional.
Yeah.
You cry in the office. Well, that's unprofessional.
Did you get help at the time? Did you reach out for help either publicly or internally?
I did. I had a couple of work colleagues, but there were also work colleagues you reach out for that ended up, felt that they stabbed you in the back, because sometimes in some organisations that is just cutthroat. That's that culture of that organisation. I obviously reached out to my doctor, and he referred me to cognitive behaviour therapy, which was really useful. I had limited friends that I would share that with, because again, you didn't talk about it. And there is this thing, I think it's really great that we say about men talking about mental health, and they should do, and we should be listening and talking about them. And I think it's really good that we get out there that men should be talking. I believe, though, there is a sort of blinkered that women are talking about it, which they are, but they're not getting the right support. They'll talk to a friend and they'll go, oh yeah, I feel like that, and or you should do this, you should do that. And it's like, I know what to do. I just wanted someone to listen. I just wanted someone to say, it's going to be okay. I wanted someone to say, do you need a hug? I wanted non-judgment. And you don't get that. And I still think that's the case now with women. I can feel myself getting emotional because I feel so passionate about it.
Yeah, you do.
That women still don't get support about their mental health as we believe they do.
Yeah,
I say we, the royal we.
I think you're right. I speak to just as actually probably more women than I do men in terms of kind of like questions and having conversations with people. And actually very often, because of, even if it's not directly themselves, indirectly, they're having to kind of care for and support children or young adults or partners or whatever that may be. And like you said, so there is this kind of, I guess it's the same as the, and I use the word myth quite intentionally, but a little bit kind of controversially, that it's the same, I guess, with, we're talking today about kind of mental health and cancer, for example. Actually, there's probably more of a taboo element around cancer, weirdly, than there is around mental health now in an organizational setup. Which is why it's important. As I said, that's exactly why, apart from just love chatting to you, to get you by and get this kind of message out there, I think it's really important. But Hannah Bailey of on our last episode was saying in the frontline services is very different. Actually, when she had a cancer diagnosis, it gave her a valid reason to leave at the time when she was struggling with her mental health. So it's really interesting, isn't it? These kind of dynamics that are at play. And I'm with you 100%. It's certainly, even though concentrating on men's health certainly has its benefits in some sectors, generations, cultures, absolutely. I think generally it needs to be about everyone engaging still, definitely.
Absolutely. And there's different needs. There's different needs. We need to encourage men to talk out. I've got nephews, more nephews than I have nieces. And I'm always checking in with them and making sure they're okay, and they're chatting and they've got their network that they can chat to, because sometimes it's still hard to go and talk to an auntie about things, but they know I'm there. But at the same time with my niece, it's like making sure that she's open up and talking about it. It's still making sure that everybody, it's more about the thing, I think, is about, we need to tell people how to listen. That's what we need to do. It's not about talking, it's about listening. And I think that for me is the key element, really, of how we really could go around about changing things, is about telling people, teaching people more so how to listen.
It seems strange having a sensible conversation with you after so many years just chatting other stuff.
I know.
It's good. So up to that point in the journey, obviously you had the challenge of this kind of mental health challenges coming through. You found yourself in that position of the depression kicking in. I know you've mentioned before in the previous element of being single and how that also impacts the dynamic as well. Absolutely,
because quite often you're treated as a second-class citizen, and that's me being quite blunt, because you get all those things. Well, what's wrong with you? Oh, you haven't got much time. You're being too fussy. Oh, are you a lesbian? Because those things come out now, which they never used to do before.
You mentioned last time about that kind of stigma of if you're about having kids and that kind of stuff as well. I mean, that's That really stuck
Yeah,
out in my head when you mentioned that before. There's an
absolutely.
expectation that you should have
I
kids.
should have, yeah.
Yeah.
And so why haven't you got children? You know, what's wrong with you? Or, you know, and it's that whole kind of thing. Even, and I know we're going to talk cancer in a minute, but even the comments that were made to me about my cancer journey was literally like my life was less important because I didn't have children.
Wow.
You know,
It's nuts, isn't it?
it is nuts, and you are dismissed from conversations and things, you know, because you know you haven't got children, and it's like, but I've been a child myself. I'm an auntie, and I know it's different.
Yeah.
But actually, my nieces and nephews mean so much to me,
Yeah.
and I've been there from them since the minute they were born.
Yeah.
You know, so yeah, it's different, and it's different when you haven't got children and you're an auntie because they see you differently.
Yeah, I think the reason why it does resonate with me, and I'm with you so strongly on that, as you know, like myself and Claire in the same situation, that our focus goes on our nieces and nephews, and but there is still that kind of people kind of even to ask the question, they edge around the question, have you got kids? They kind of give you that kind of like, oh,
Yeah,
all right, I've got a small shih tzu
why?
to look after.
Did
I'm
you not
fine.
want them? You're not motherly.
Yeah. I've got a small shih tzu who's epileptic, so that's enough looking after it. They're never going to need to do so.
Well, I've got a head that just does its own thing sometimes, and I can't. So, you know, the fact I have to keep it on the rest of my body, that's why I don't have them, because I've got enough time trying to figure my head out.
So from that point, I guess, so you started to realize that was all kicking in. You were going home. It was not in a good place. You were keeping busy all the time. How did the kind of career element, because I know, again, very similar to Hannah, kind of both of your things reached a point at very similar times, didn't they?
Yeah, I mean, I specialised into recruitment from HR to help my own well-being. That was.
I've never heard anybody go into recruitment to help their well-being. It always seems quite a manic place to be honest.
Well, I was in-house.
Okay.
Recruitment. There's a slight difference because you're not chasing the money, and you're not chasing the stats.
Yeah.
You're talking bigger picture recruitment, basically.
Cool.
You know, so you have an investment because actually you're going to work with these people. So, you know, you've got to doubly make sure you get it right. But it was making a difference. I just didn't go, oh, you haven't got the job, that's it. I made sure I gave feedback, and I worked, you know. So I did that whole, I suppose, onboarding, as they call it now, before it was even started internally. But I thought I could make a more positive difference that way. And also, I'd worked hard for my HR career. I was professionally qualified, even though I still couldn't believe it. I didn't want to give it up. And I thought about being a coach, and I trained and I got qualified as being a coach. But I didn't think I'd be able to make it. That whole limiting self-belief that you'll never reach the people you want to reach, keeping yourself small, wasn't going to happen. So I just thought, oh well, it will add to it. But it was coming up to this time in 2016, sort of the autumn time, when my mental health did a really big dip. I hadn't kept my eye on it. I was definitely overworked. I loved where I worked, but I was tired. I was burnt out. It'd been a busy 9 months in a new job in a place I absolutely loved working. So I was, you know, doing more than I probably needed to, but also slipping up by not doing other things and then beating myself up. So I spiraled into depression, and it took me a long time before I realized where I was emotionally, mentally, physically. And I saw my doctor. It took me a little while. It was probably beginning of December by the time I plucked up the courage and realization to go and talk to my doctor. And he said, I'm sorry, Louise, the depression is back. He knows I won't take time off work, but it was coming up to Christmas. So went on the medication, have Christmas off, up the medication. By this time in my life, I'm now sharing with my mum. It's taken me a long time, but I'm able to share that a little bit more about my mental health. It's still a bit of a taboo. My parents are that generation whereby, you know, it's that case of not understanding. And I think we still got it, even younger generations. But my mum would say to my dad, Louise is coming up, she's staying over at Christmas, you know, still live in the same town. She needs a break. She needs to change the scenery. Oh, she works too hard. You know, I keep telling her she's working too hard. My mum's like, yeah, I agree. She agrees. She doesn't need to hear that. You know, it's that kind of sympathy. That Christmas, I was absolutely numb. I was absolutely shattered. I literally had no energy. But I had still the comments made, oh, you're being miserable, you know, and everything else, because I just didn't have the energy to really take part in a jovial Christmas. And I had that conversation with my mum, and I remember saying to her, I need to change something. I can't keep living like this. But I don't know what, and I don't know how. But if I don't, what is the point of me being here? Literally, I just don't know the route. So we go into 2017, and I'm all about repairing myself and taking it just a few months in time. Let's just get myself better. And then I can look perhaps a little bit bigger picture. Well, as you know, I had the biggest plot twist ever, as I call it. And I was diagnosed with breast cancer. And I will share, as you know, I love to share how my diagnosis was found, because I could just help one other person.
Yeah.
So briefly, I had a concern with my left breast. I had a discharge. My hands always move this way. You can tell, can't you? I'm trying to make a bit of fun of this. I had a discharge from my left breast on my pajama tops. It happened a couple of times. I thought it was really strange. So, and I was in between jobs now, and I went to see my GP, who examined me, said, I don't think there's anything untoward. However, I'll refer you to be on the safe side. I was referred to see a consultant at the hospital. Again, examined me, said, I don't think there's anything untoward. Might be a blocked milk duct, might be some other kind of cyst, might be, but we'll get you referred to be on the safe side. So I had a mammogram and I had an ultrasound, and during the ultrasound, they said, there's something here on your right. We need to do a biopsy. And I was like, but it's my left I've got a concern with. So bless them, they did the ultrasound all over again. I went, no, there's something here. And obviously did a biopsy. Didn't think anything of it. And literally a week later, I was phoned by the hospital, asked if I could go in, and they told me that they'd found cancer in my right breast. So I didn't find a lump. The GP didn't find a lump. The consultant didn't find a lump. The test to be on the safe side found cancer in my right breast, which is just mind-boggling.
So was the kind of the leakage a byproduct, or was it just purely a coincidence or lucky coincidence in this sense? I
suppose a lucky coincidence. It was like my left breast was saying there's something wrong with your right and it can't tell you. That's how I kind of wording it, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
It literally was just like a dry, wet mark on my pajama tops, and it stopped. After that, it stopped. It didn't happen again. We just don't know why, but it happened a few times for me to think I ought to go and get this checked out.
Yeah.
You know, and I knew it wasn't water, because obviously you could see it was a dry, wet mark, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it's because of the way you tell this story. I kind of, if people are actually watching the video, not listening, if you see me kind of smiling or even nearly laughing, it's because the way that Lou tells his story, and we're going to go into this now, is that I think it's quite a warm way of describing what happens. And as mysterious universal nudges goes, a leaky left nipple is up there, isn't it, as one of the biggest.
Absolutely. I haven't really worded it like that before. I might have to do that. Leaky left nipple.
You're welcome.
I'll take another one. I'll take from you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So are you truly being heard in life and in business? And think about that genuinely. If the answer to that is no, then you've found the right event. If you want to give yourself that boost personally and professionally, come along to Find Your Voice Live. This will change your life. This will be the game changer that you've been looking for.
It provides me with the confidence in myself to prove to myself that I can do it, I can get up on stage, I can speak.
There's absolutely nothing to be nervous about with these events. It's very, very open, very, very relaxed.
Help my confidence go from here at the beginning of the day to here at the end of the day.
Hey everyone, my name is Nick Elston. I'm an inspirational speaker on the lived experience of mental health and a transformational speaking coach. I'm the founder of Forging People, and Find Your Voice Live is our flagship event where we cross the boundaries of personal development, mental health, transformation, and public speaking. Your ability to speak, to deliver any message to any audience with clarity and power and emotion will have an ultimately defining impact on your success by your own definition of that really subjective term. Speaking is life, speaking is business, speaking is education, and that's the thing that we focus on most. What I find is that people are here for many, many different reasons. Some people do absolutely want to be a stage speaker or a professional speaker. Some people want to be able to represent their business or to lead a team or inspire a movement or create a story. But even actually, some people want to be here just because they want to feel they want to be heard at home. Maybe they don't feel their opinions being heard, that they can't say yes to the things they want to say yes to, or no to the things they want to say no to. Again, this is where personal development meets mental health, meets public speaking to create a real positive impact. At the end of Find Your Voice Live, you will walk away with massive confidence around delivering your message. The ability to stand up and deliver means you will enhance your self-esteem in an amazing way. You will also have the skills and tools and tips and techniques to not only deliver a presentation, but to structure a presentation, to find your audience, to be able to deliver emotional storytelling to help your audience feel and make them want to be part of your tribe, make them want to be part of your following, and really tune into what you're truly about, to truly make yourself heard in life and in business. If you're sat on the fence, if you're still not sure, take the model that I use, say yes, worry about it later, and I'll make sure that you're looked after brilliantly. Myself and my team will make sure that you have an amazing day, a transformational day that will have the desired positive impact that you want to achieve.
So yeah, so obviously you had the diagnosis. I mean, how did it feel? I mean, it feels kind of, you go cold when you see people get that kind of diagnosis, even when it's been staged for adverts. You see it really cold.
Yeah, absolute shock. You know, I was with my mum. Thankfully, I wasn't on my own, but we were absolutely in disbelief because, you know, we had the biopsy. We were talking about other things. Cancer didn't even come into either of our heads. It literally didn't. So, and I thought when I had the phone call about coming in, because actually at the time I was working in your neck of the woods, up in Yate. Yeah. So I had to go
Yate,
the big
please.
Yate. Oh yeah, sorry, darling, Yate.
Is Yate.
Obviously had to do the big trip back to Western, as in an hour journey, as you know. And I just thought, oh, they know I'm local. They just want to get me out of the system. Literally, that was what was on my head, head, that there was nothing there. So let's just get you out of the way. So we were absolutely shocked. They told me about the different treatment that would happen depending on what the cancer was. I was going to have a lumpectomy the following week, and then whether I had radiotherapy or whether I had to have chemo, and then if it was a certain gene, then I would have to have a mastectomy. To which point I literally said, "You're not removing these are my best assets." It literally just sort of fell out of my mouth. My McMilan nurse, spooky on the surname as well, just said to me, "I knew you were going to be okay. I knew you were going to be a fighter, because that was your response. If that's your response when you're being told something like that," she said, "in my history, I know that, you know, that mental capacity is going to be there. It's going to be strong."
The strengths you played to as well. I remember the first Speaking Academy Christmas one that I run, that you were there. I think you were even speaking with 2 Christmas puddings stuck on your jumper. So.
Well, the thing is I've always had a love-hate relationship with my breasts. You know, it was always sometimes the comments that were made, you know, "You're not going to be very successful in your career because you're blonde and you're big boobed," or "Guys aren't really going to be interested in you because you're blonde and you're big boobed." When you're getting that from different corners, you know, you can't help but think, well, I've got to try extra hard, or you know, I'm obviously not interesting enough either, because, you know, so it plays on you. So that whole thing then about having that love-hate relationship with them, and as I say, then they're trying to kill me, is a little bit ironic in some respects. But we left the hospital in shock, and all I could think of was what I was going to call it, and I called it Stan. And in that week, Stan became quite famous in my friends and my family that knew, because that's how I referred to it. Because I think it was just me trying to find a little bit of humor in my own way to manage it. I still think for a long time I was just in a bubble of just going with the flow. You know, I hear other people saying, "Oh, well, I question this and I question that, and I wanted to go down this route with my treatment." I didn't. That never even came in my mind. I was just like, right, okay, this is what we're doing, and I'm just on that conveyor belt. That's just what we're doing. It was.
Did it help you see it as kind of like an external thing, as like something else that you don't want in you, kind of thing? By name it, just seems to be. It seems to me to make sense. Is effective. So actually, the way that you named it, like I said, is definitely a humour thing, and knowing you for sure. Yes. But actually, by externalizing that, actually, it kind of makes you feel that it wasn't you; it was something in you.
Absolutely, that they were going to get rid of. And my friend summed it up literally a couple of days later, where she said, Stan is going to give some scientists a lot of pleasure as they push it around a petri dish, so therefore it was then again taken away from me that it was just something else.
Yeah.
I mean, I had my lumpectomy, and that went well. And when I went in for the results, so what they told me about my cancer was that it was 25 millimeters and stage 2. When I went in to get my results 2 weeks later, they said that it was actually bigger. As soon as they opened me up, they knew it was bigger. It was actually 45 millimeters. And they removed 3 lymph nodes, and they found Cyril and Sydney, as I call them, parting out of my lymph nodes with cancer. So, it was that case of now I was down the chemo route. So it was like, this is the route we're going to go down: chemotherapy, then radiotherapy, and everything else. And they knew what my cancer was. That was it was hormone positive and estrogen positive. So they knew the route that we were going to go down.
Wow.
So yeah.
So whilst this was all going on, you still obviously had the mental health challenges that you're kind of battling with, because I think we both know that it's just something that you kind of manage and sometimes harness, and sometimes you go easy on and sometimes you don't. And but you were going through several kind of adversities at the time. How did it play out in terms of kind of your employment at that point?
Well, I'd not long started a new job. So literally I had been there weeks, and who I worked for at the time.
Yeah.
And they were nothing but supportive.
Yeah.
I found out on the Monday. The Tuesday I was supposed to go up to Bolton for one of their other offices. My manager, the HR director, said, "Oh, I'll tell your colleague that you won't go." And I went, "Oh no, I'm still going." Because like me, no, you don't stop.
Yeah.
You keep going. So I literally the next day went to Bolton, and the HR colleague I went with, actually I emailed her earlier on, still a good friend now. I didn't know her beforehand. Brilliant support. We talked about it. We didn't talk about it. We talked about other things. She just listened as and when I wanted to talk about it. And they were supportive while I was off. I was off for 2 weeks to recover from my lumpectomy. Paid full pay. There was no worry about pay. They were going to pay me. And we had a plan. So we had a plan about when I started my chemotherapy, how that would work, and the equipment they would give me so I could still do my job from home, and how it would work with the other colleagues in the office, because when you have chemo, after day 7, your immune system is very, very low. So you've got to be careful about who you spend time with. So it was very much about, right, we'll work all this around us. And that's what we did. I couldn't fault them. They were so supportive.
Amazing.
Really were.
Fun fact, you worked with my mum.
Exactly. That's how you know I worked for.
Yeah,
Which
exactly.
I obviously didn't know at the time, because I didn't know you, but we worked out afterwards.
Yeah. Interesting. Such a small world.
It is such a small world.
It really is. So, I mean, what was the journey kind of? Thankfully, I believe that you then went on to get the kind of the treatment and the subsequent all clear.
Eventually, yes.
Eventually, yeah. And what led to the launch of your coaching business?
Well, something else happened while I had cancer. Don't remember. I also had appendicitis.
Yeah, of course you did. Yeah, it was wasn't a double whammy. It's a triple whammy. I see your double whammy and I raise you one.
Yeah, absolutely. So about a week after my first chemo, I had this really bad stomach ache, and everyone kept telling me, "Oh, it's the side effects of chemo, and you don't know your pain threshold." Because of course I'm not giving birth, so I won't know my pain threshold. So another sort of dig into the not being a mum. And it carried on, and I was in absolute pain. And this one day I was traveling to work, got as far as Gordana on the M5. So, I'm not even halfway to Yates at this point. I turned back round and I eventually go and said, I'm going to see the doctor. So all my other results I had for tests for cancer had come back clear, which was great. Totally overshadowed though by the pain I was in. But anyway, to cut that story short, I had appendicitis. My appendix had burst. It was now in an abscess, which was stuck to my bowel and my colon. They tried to do keyhole, but they couldn't, so they had to open me up. So major emergency surgery, in intensive care for 48 hours, blood transfusion. Hair is now literally falling out with hair. I could just go like this with my hair. I'm, for people who are listening can't see, I'm literally just walking my hands through my hair, and literally it's just coming out. And then I have an infection in my wound. So then I have to have that open. So I've then got an open scar, or open wound, as they call it, with a vacuum pack on me. So my chemo treatment is delayed from, instead of being every 3 weeks, it's now got a 10-week gap between the first chemo and the second chemo. So it took a while for me to get back onto what I'd called the chemo train, and then went through. So, but what I found from this, and this is where I suppose the career change happened, is when I went back, because I then had a career break, because I didn't know when I was going to go back to work. And the company again was very supportive whilst I was in hospital, but we did come to the agreement that I didn't know when I was going to be back. I didn't know when I could drive again because of my surgery and everything. So we parted, and I had a career break. And then when I went back, there was one day I was working for a company in Bath, and I was traveling home, and I could just feel the pressure and the disbelief in myself all coming around again. And the following morning, I was getting ready, and I had this quote on a notice board that said, if you always do what you've always done, you'll always do what you've always got. And that morning, that quote was absolutely huge. And I went, this is it. I've got to change. I've got to change what I'm doing. I want to be a coach. I want to help people. I want to help people with their own answers. It's not for me to share and tell them what to do, because I know that really gets on my goat. It's about, I want someone to find the answers in me. I can find the answers in them. I trained. That's what coaching is. So I thought, right, I'm going to go for it. I'm going to make a go of it, because during that whole piece, I learned so much about myself. I knew I was resilient. I knew even more I was resilient. But for me, when I was going through cancer, people were helping a lot more. You know, they were being more supportive. They could see I was going through something. I was bold, and I went bold. I didn't wear my wig. I decided not to do that. I ignored the comments of, oh, I think you ought to wear your wig. No, I'm going to be bold. I'm going to embrace it. I suppose it's because I got used to seeing myself bold when I was in hospital. But also the nitpicking, the snide comments and everything seemed to, I say they stop. It might not stop. It might be that I just ignored them, but they weren't happening. The other thing was, people liked me. I had this very emotional conversation with my mum when I was in hospital, when I said, people do like me. I had cards and things coming from people I worked with over 10 years ago that had heard through the HR community, the HR, world, that had heard about it and were getting in touch. It was like, oh, I am liked by being me, if that makes sense. And
I'm surprised that surprises you, but I also get that we feel that kind of, I don't know, imposter syndrome, kind of that self-esteem going at times, don't we?
Absolutely. And I did, because I didn't think I was I didn't think I was good enough to be around certain people. It's surprising how your inner voice really controls your thought process by little things. As you say, you get little things, but you just magnify them. And as we've talked about many times, and I know you've shared this, you can have 9 fantastic comments and 1 negative feedback. And you home in on the negative feedback
every time.
And I will find the need. I say, if I hadn't heard from a friend, especially when mental health was bad, if I messaged them and hadn't heard back from them, I will find that needle in that haystack of something I've said that perhaps didn't land properly, or I did 15 years ago, and go, and they really do hate me.
Yeah. There's a football manager, Ian Holloway, for football.
Oh yeah, I know. Yeah,
very outspoken, funny guy. I thought it was quite appropriate quip for given the topic of our chat right now. He said, "My kind of luck is the one where if I fell in a barrel of boobs, I'll come out sucking me thumb." I thought it was quite funny. Just to throw that in there. I don't know why I've written it in there, but you were the first person that I've seen this over the years since in working with people on their speaking journey and stuff. You were the first person that genuinely I could say, I wish you could see what I see in you. And that explains why. Because like I said, a bit further on from that time, when you were looking to kind of even formulate a message around what you'd been through and what you had experienced, I could see it straight away from the get-go. And now you're out there doing it. And I think that's...
I know. And I still don't believe myself, because I still get all teary-eyed when you say that to me.
Yeah, I can myself. Yeah. Yeah, I could tell. It's got a very emotional episode.
Giggles and tears, it's what it's all about.
But you've returned the favour since, because if we can call it that, when I was speaking earlier in the year, the Business Focus Conference, I did not know this. I was brought in to speak at this conference, and lo and behold, a one Lou McMilan come out of the audience and actually introduced me with a very touching, very personal message. And she absolutely threw me before I went on, because I just didn't anticipate that. It was such a nice thing. We had a nice hug, and then I could get on and deliver it, but just meant so much. And I think that that's kind of what we try to do, isn't it? I think certainly what you try to do is to, and that's why sometimes I feel guilty for smiling or chuckling along to your story, because I know you, and I know the way that you deliver it, and you also help other people feel at ease with this stuff.
Absolutely, yeah, that's the thing, because cancer is such a hard subject for anybody. We've all got experiences, you know, other members of my family have had cancer, but it is that whole thing about trying to make it, and actually it came from another friend who said you've made cancer less scary by the whole way you just approached it. But I think what also helped with me doing that was because I was going through cancer, I was allowed to be me.
Yeah.
And I think that's what helped me so much, because then if I think I'd gone through something else and was sort of being a bit jovial, I think people would have said, Louise, that's not appropriate. But because I was going through cancer and I was bold and people were shocked, there was that whole thing about, we, you know, gotta be nice, gotta sort of look after, you know, to her, not anything, you know, not be horrible or anything, which kind of helps with my whole mindset now, which is a thing of, if I had when I had cancer, if I was too poorly for you to say something really negative about me, you don't have the right to say it any other time.
No.
Because no one, you shouldn't say, oh, someone's too poorly because they're going through something like cancer or something else that's equally as traumatic, to not be horrible to somebody. Yeah. You shouldn't be that way anytime. And that's what I think is what people need to be thinking about, you know, is if this person was going through something, which I know people don't always think that way, but if this person was going through it, would I be saying it? If it's a no, then don't say it.
Yeah, absolutely. I get that. I guess it's, and also when you were going through things, when anybody's going through things, that there is this fear about like what to say. But I guess the other option is you don't say anything, and that's worse, I guess, than actually saying something, isn't it? Absolutely.
I mean, one of the loveliest texts I had, and she's no longer with us. She passed away while I was going through my cancer journey. A lovely lady called Sarah, who had a brain tumor. She'd had breast cancer before. And she sent me a text message, and she said, you'd think of all people I would know what to say, and I don't. And that to me was the best message, because it was honest.
Yeah.
It absolutely was honest. But you have the other comments being said, you know, and people are trying to make it lighthearted. And it's not when you're going through that. And I picked a couple of people up, or I've shared it, and other people go, God, I never thought that way. You know, I had people trying to say, oh, you know, at least you can choose what size you want to be. No, I don't want to choose what size I want to be. They're my breasts. Or it could be worse. You could be a mum. Or at least you haven't got a family to look after. You know, and I say to people, I live on my own. I lived on my own going through cancer. If I wanted a glass of water, I had to get up and walk downstairs and go and get a glass of water. There was nobody else around me to get the glass of water, unless I went and stayed in somebody else's home for them to look after me. And that's not when you're going through something, you want your own space. You know, there was comments of what was it? Oh, I was gone now. I've had a mammogram and I'm okay. Well, I'm glad you've had a mammogram and I'm glad you're okay. That's not helping me right now when I've just told you I've got cancer.
Yeah.
Or my mum, my sister, or I know someone that died of cancer. Okay, yeah, okay, I'm really sympathetic. But when someone's just told you they've got breast cancer, you're not joining in the fun. You're acknowledging and asking what help you can do. But it's like this thing of we've all got to be, oh yeah, I'm me.
Yeah, or try and fix people, or just listen.
Absolutely. My sister says that, and someone says to her, oh yes, my sister had that. That's fine. But when you're going through it, you know, it's the fact that you know somebody that died isn't really helping right now. And although you end up being the person that's sympathizing and stuff, and it's like, just told you something really powerful.
Yeah, absolutely. And talking about kind of your speaking stuff, that the progress has been phenomenal. And we were talking just before we hit record today that you have another event coming up now where you're the opening keynote speaker, and it's such a great platform for you to have, because not just because it's an important message, but you are a wonderful, warm and inspirational speaker. and I know that you do a great job when you do these events. Have you ever, I know you're very mindful to actually give people kind of trigger warnings, and I know you're very mindful to follow up in the correct way. I think that's a given.
Yeah.
Have you ever had any kind of pushback, or have you ever had any kind of people that, I guess heckled would be strong, but in terms of anybody that have felt really kind of resistant to what you're talking about?
No, I've had a few people that perhaps when I've been sat in an event and been sat on their table, chatting to them, and then gone up and talked and then come back, kind of been really distant. That's been really strange. So that was kind of a little bit kind of, you kind of come back to the table and you're chatting and stuff, and where they were engaging talking beforehand haven't. And all I kind of put that down to sometimes is they're going through their own thought process, or people or somebody. Absolutely, it's not down to me. I mean, I say I haven't been heckled since I stood up when I was in a HR role once, but that's a different story.
Next time, when you come back for the third time, you can tell us about it. I'm just looking at the time, like, give us 2 episodes and we just fill them up straight away. It's crazy. I know. So I guess well, that's good. And I think actually you're quite right. I think the more defensive people are, actually usually the more relevant it is to what's going on with them. And but whether I'm kind of, I don't know, maybe my thinking skewed because I'm in mental health all the time, the same as you, but it does seem more of a taboo word, cancer, than it does mental health, weirdly. So it's no wonder why it's such an important message. But there's no wonder why that you're getting so much success going out delivering what you're delivering. So keep on keeping on.
I think it's that double thing, isn't it? You're talking about mental health and you talk about cancer, and people say to me, how was your mental health with the cancer? And I always say cancer saved me. I really do, because I don't know where I'd be with my mental health. It gave me such more strength and belief in myself, which is really, really bizarre. But that's why I want to share that story. One, to help everything about mental health, but also to be checking our boobs and say, look, cancer is how we look at it as well, to think about what is it kind of teaching us, as well as going through something horrendously horrific, because my journey was hard. And I'm going to say that, it wasn't a piece of cake, but it was that case of, I just kept going, that kind of thing. So yes. And I always talk to people. I talk in group and I answer questions to people, but I always make sure I'm around to chat to people one-to-one, either about mental health or talk about breast cancer and afterwards, because I know some people don't want to share it with everybody else. Happily come and chat. And I've had people just message me afterwards just saying, have you got time for a chat? And I always say yes, chat to anybody. So
brilliant. Absolutely. Alexa, you're a good friend, and I love chatting to you, but it's been really special having you back on. And
thank you again.
Not just because you're the first person to come back, but also to you managed to fill up a second episode. And I could have gone down so many more rabbit holes with you. So future episode is definitely in the making, Lou. So, but
you have to make a note what you want me to go and talk about, so we don't digress even more.
So now there's so many more people who have tuned into what you're about. Please do connect with Lou. All the links and stuff are in the bio. As she said, she'd always be happy to hear from people if you want to connect with her, ask her questions and that kind of stuff. Show her the Christmas pudding jumper, maybe. I don't know.
I never liked Christmas jumpers, just to add. I refused to have them. And then I found one like that one, and I was like, it's just got to be.
Well, I'll throw that in. Being this is going out in October, we're kind of gearing up for Christmas. There's stuff for Christmas jumpers, you'll be fine. So, okay, before I let you go into the wilds of Weston Supermare, I am now the MC of the O2 Arena in London. 20,000 people have paid their hard-earned money to come and hear you do your thing. You're sat back in the green room sipping a Prosecco or a tipple of your choice, and you hear me announce your name when your walk-on music kicks in, that song that motivates you, that lifts you, that gets you at peak state. And I know you'll use this as a professional speaker. What is your walk-on music, Lou McMilan? And why?
This Girl Is On Fire by Alicia Keys. Some of the wording on there is which she talks to when you listen to it is just really key.
Nice, I see what you did there.
Oh yeah. But also it's that thing of, I've changed so much from everything I've been through, just the cancer journey, that I'm out there and I'm determined to live my best life. It's not easy. There are days where, I really just want to curl up in a ball and just hide from the world. But actually, I'm not helping other people if I do that. And so there I'm on fire to get out there and help people. And let's get everybody on fire to live their life more fully on their terms, as I call it.
Love that. And the fact that you shared that as well, I think is important to share the reality, the downs as well as the ups and that kind of stuff. That's why you're such an engaging person too.
Absolutely. And we've talked about that before. We've shared, haven't we? We've shared sometimes it's just really hard. And yeah, being open with that is what we've got to do.
As per the old bumper sticker, shit happens.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And on that bombshell, Louise McMilan, big round of applause.
Thank you, Nick. Thank you. And a round of applause for you too.
Love chatting to you. And I hope everybody else has enjoyed this episode too. I'm sure you have. Please hit like, subscribe, and all that jazz, whatever it's going to take to get you back for the next episode. Another amazing person coming your way very, very soon. But for now, take care, be well, be happy. Cheers, guys. Bye-bye.
Bye.